Lisa from Life in Layouts. Thanks for joining me for another process video. Today I'm using 6x6 2 paper pads with Allison Davis. This is a paid sketch that I paid for, so I am not able to show the sketch itself, but I have used this before, and the premise of this class is to use up our 6x6 paper pads. So the sketch that I'm following today calls for us to use 1x1 squares. And I thought about cutting them out, but then I realized that I had this punch, and I figured that it would probably be a lot easier to punch them out. So now I'm just going through this paper, and I pulled out, I think, 4 sheets. And I start to punch them out, and I think I do like 3 of each color that I had pulled out. And on this one here, the border strips, I wanted to get it exactly in the right place so that I could make sure that I get the right design on the square, because I didn't want like a half a bicycle or something like that. So as I'm laying them out, I realize that it would probably be easier to put them on a sheet of paper, and I bring that out here in a minute. But I'm just trying to kind of line them up. And at this point, that's when I realize that I have nowhere near the amount of squares that I need. So I start to pull out my other 6x6 paper pads. And I have a bunch of different papers to use, and I start punching them out and realize that I need a ton of them. So you'll see my big pile here in a second. So what I did was I cut all of my photos to 4x4, and then I cut these white cardstock down to 4x4 as well. And I'm just going to start making kind of a quilt pattern. And I decided that I was going to ink the edges, which I realized like after the first one, I was like, oh my goodness, I'm going to be here all day. So I cut all of that out for you guys, because I'm sure you didn't want to see me ink all of those edges. So I used the inspiration of the 1x1 squares for this layout, but I didn't really follow the sketch too closely because it didn't work for the photos that I had. But I love the way that this came out. These 3 squares here, 4x4 squares with the 16 1x1 squares in it, I think is just perfect for this layout. So I'm going to ink the edges around each one of those just to make sure that the white cardstock isn't too distracting. And then I'm going to start to build my page. So I'm going to actually use not white cardstock as my base, and I'm going to use this navy. So as I'm putting these pictures together, let me explain what's going on here. We attempted to make slime, and so we had the glue and the little containers and the food coloring, and we even had glitter. And it did not work at all. We let it sit for a while, and it just was not, it just didn't work out at all. So you can see on this picture here, like, it's all over our hands. So at this point we were like, my boyfriend and I were like, what do we do? Because the boys were a mess. We even laid down like a tablecloth on the table to ensure that we didn't get, glue and slime everywhere. But so the boys' hands were messy. My hands was messy. It was not coming off. So we ended up just dumping both the boys' containers inside the bathtub with them. And they had a blast, like trying to write on the walls of the tub with it and on the tile. So it was fun, but they had to have a bath after they had the bath. But they had a lot of fun. So now I am realizing that I have that one photo that I think it's still 4x6. It's not, if I did cut it down, it's like a 4x5, but I think it's still 4x6. So I'm going to add a line up here, and then I realized that I only need 1 inch instead of 2 inches. So I'm going to cut it down again. So I like that polka dot paper, having that line of polka dot paper, because it kind of brings your eye up to the top of the layout. So now I'm going to get ready and glue everything down. And while I'm doing this, I highly recommend this class by Scrapbook Generations. It is probably one of the best classes that I've taken in a while. It's opened up so many different ways that you can use 6x6 paper pad or your scraps. That was another thing that I pulled out. There were times when I didn't really have a 6x6 pad to go along with one of the layouts, so I just pulled out my scraps and used that as well. So it is a sketch sketches. There's tons of sketches in there that I will probably use over and over again. So I highly recommend checking them out at Scrapbook Generations. So now I am trying to figure out what I'm going to do for embellishments. And actually what I end up doing is I use this cut apart piece as my main embellishments, and I'm going to add them in a couple of different places. And I have some close-ups of them at the end for you guys to see. But there's a Picasso saying in there about being artistic, and then of course the boys will be boys. So I really think that art is an important thing, obviously, with being a scrapbooker, and I always want to get the boys involved in some type of art as well, so we try to do that quite often. So I'm going to use these stickers to spell out slime fail, because that is definitely what this was. Just a big fat mess. And we were missing a main ingredient in the slime. So after we put the boys in the bath and we got them ready for bed and everything, we looked up the Pinterest recipe for slime, and we realized that we were missing a pretty big ingredient. So that's what made the slime not gel together. I don't really know what it's supposed to do. So here's where I am putting all those little squares, the little different sayings. I used fun foam on the back of all of them to add to it. I think, this is where I pull out my sewing machine. And I think that I have mentioned to you guys before that I have a love-hate relationship with this sewing machine. And so it's coming towards the end of the video, and I was so frustrated with it that I think I forgot to turn my camera back on. So you'll see exactly what happens. I've took tons of pictures, and I actually let this, the full layout, go a little bit longer so that you guys are able to see all the detail. But really the only thing that I wasn't filmed was the rest of the stitching and then my journaling. So you can see here where it just the stitching didn't work at all. So, but I left it in there because I thought it's a fail, it's a slime fail, it all goes together. So this is the saying that I was saying, every child's an artist. The problem is how to remain an artist when we grow up. I think that that's a powerful statement. So thanks everyone for watching, and I hope you have a scrappy day.